GoPro's new release of the Hero 11, is this still the best action camera for four-wheel driving that money can buy? And with its new features, is this your next camera purchase? Welcome back to George's Cameras TV, and if you enjoyed the intro as much as I did creating it, then you're going to love this brand new release from GoPro. We're actually up in far North Queensland in the Cape York region, so we're going to have a great opportunity to be able to see what new features this camera can do for us, whilst we're going to be tackling some of these four-wheel drive tracks up in this area. And with that, let's have a look at some of the new features and specs that this camera can offer. Starting off with the first feature, and probably the main feature that you're going to be seeing in this new camera, is the sensor. It is a 8x7 sensor, and with that you're getting a 5.3K up to 30 frames per second, utilizing that entire sensor. If you do it back down to 16:9, you then actually get 5.3K up to 60 frames per second. And with that, it actually allows the horizon stabilization to kick in and actually gives you a lot more room to be able to utilize that feature of having up to 27 degrees of stabilization of the horizon. With that, because you can now utilize that full 8x7 sensor, it actually becomes really useful for those that are doing a lot of social content, those that are doing anything in portrait mode, of course landscape mode, or even just square formats that you can be able to resize everything. And pairing that with the front-facing screen that you have here, so long as you're in the center of that screen, you can be able to reformat your frame to be anything you like in the post-production. Unfortunately, the processor has not been upgraded, so comparing it to its predecessor, the Hero 10, you're only really gaining the sensor size because the processor is exactly the same. Heading over to the design of the camera, feeling it and looking at it, it does seem to be a bit of a larger camera, seeing as it does have that 8x7 sensor, but it's exactly the same size as the Hero 9 and the Hero 10. And only weighing at 153 grams, it's no surprise that this thing is still a popular camera to be going for. Seeing as the camera is exactly the same size as the Hero 9 and the 10, you can utilize existing mods that you already have. So anything like media mods, other housings, obviously like sticks, anything like that is touching to the bottom especially, they're exactly the same. So that is really good. The actual housing itself from the GoPro, it still allows you to only go up to 10 meters, which is not terrible. You still have that ability to go up to those depths, which is still a great depth. Generally, you don't have to go any further, but that would be a nice thing to see, I guess, in some future cameras as we have deep diving people that are wanting to go a little bit further with cameras. And because these cameras, are getting better to what mirrorless and DSLR cameras are like, would be good to see these cameras to be able to reach those kind of depths that those larger pro camera water housings would be like. Moving over onto the back, you do have your touchscreen again, so it is a 2.27 inch touchscreen, which is really nice. It's nice and large, I think large enough generally for these kind of action cameras. You can be able to, of course, change settings and everything like that. So it's quite responsive, even once there's a bit of water that's going across it. And yeah, it's really good. I can be able to frame up a lot of things, and it's quite responsive again, even with the actual rotation of turning the camera into portrait mode and then coming out of portrait back into landscape. On the front, however, there is another screen, just like the Hero 10. It does allow you to switch between various modes. So for one, you can just have your settings on there for those that are generally used to older cameras that are only showing settings, or if it's just distracting or anything like that. You can also then change it into a selfie mode. So like I'd said earlier, you can be able to fill up that small little screen to then be able to frame yourself up so that you can be able to utilize the remaining space that is in the frame and be able to reframe it in your post editing. That becomes quite crucial again for those that are putting their content across multiple different platforms. This is really good because then you don't have to worry about being outside or inside the frame. So long as, especially if you're doing vlogging, so long as you're inside that little frame, everything else is in the frame. And that's really good because then that's just one less thing that you have to worry about. And right next to the screen, of course, is the lens. With this lens, you can twist off this actual lens protector, and then you can actually put on the Mod Max lens. So that actually just gives you a much wider field of view. even wider than what is provided with the Super or the HYPERVIEW in this camera, which is 12 millimeters. So it's even wider for those that are in just cramped spaces. I see this utilized in spaces like rally cars or cars that are wanting to be able to see the driver and the passenger. I think it's really good that you can actually be able to get as wide as that, and if not further. Now, jumping over to the battery, this is GoPro's new Enduro battery. It is 1760 milliamp hours, so it's about 30% longer than GoPro's standard batteries. This becomes really useful when you're doing, you know, those long time lapses, and, you know, paired with the scheduled time lapse options that you have in these cameras like the Hero 10, you know, you can just let it sit out there for however many hours. I was able to get about 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so on the one battery here, and that then ended up to be about 15, maybe 9% left on the battery itself. So it could have been able to go for maybe an extra hour. And so this battery is really good. You know, and obviously if you were to get a couple of these would easily last, you know, the whole day, if not longer. And again, you know, the actual charging through the USB-C, that has been kind of really helpful. It's been very fast with the recharge. And so it's been, yeah, a bit of a workhorse, this one little battery just here. Going back to resolution, just going through a couple of other things. So again, you've got a 5.3K, 30 frames per second, utilizing the full 8x7 sensor. If you're going down to 16:9, you're then going up to 60 frames. And then if you jump down from the 5.3, you go down to 4K, you'll have 120 frames. And if you go down to 2.7K, you have 240 frames. Now, of course, you can still use the Hero 11 on the GoPro Quick app, which is seen both on the Apple and the Android devices. This is really good because if you're not familiar with it, you can be able to pair this with your phone. You can remotely shoot with it, both photo and video. And then if you needed to, you can be able to download wirelessly those photos onto your device. You can then either edit them, or you can then be able to quickly share them off to your socials and to even friends and family. And I think that's really good because the connectivity with this is really nice. And we've had a couple of these GoPros across some of the vehicles that we've had on this trip. And of course, you know, I don't want to be capturing up to 24 minutes or so on a single track. So because we're such a close convoy going through these trails, I can easily just switch between these cameras and be able to turn them either off or on, or be able to start and stop recording, or, you know, take photos, switch modes, whatever I need to. So having that wireless compatibility with these cameras becomes really good because it just makes the whole thing a lot more streamlined. Now, again, going back over to that new sensor with that 8x7, of course, the app has been updated that allows you to then be able to quickly reformat any of your footage so that you can, again, quickly share these off to your platforms. So once you've purchased the camera, make sure you download the app and go and play around with connecting everything up and have a bit of a look around, just so it becomes a whole lot more streamlined when you're out in the field like we are today. Now, with all that being said, I think it's time for us to go out and do some forward driving. So as you can see, having the HYPERSMOOTH turned just to on, it's great. It doesn't have to really be anything crazy. Even putting it into post, you don't have to put anything really on it a lot of the time. Some of the other clips we had on earlier, we just had the boost mode on as well. So obviously that's just even a step further onto it. And even if you don't know what to do, you can have the auto boost on to be able to help with having a good understanding as to which kind of settings to have it on with. And as you can see, when we had the boost on, there was very minimal kind of shake from the vehicle, and that was all just handheld. And now, you know, turning it off, having no HYPERSMOOTH on at all, that was just not terrible. You can obviously put a bit of warp stabilization on there as well, but it helps to be able to have HYPERSMOOTH on where possible. Moving on to my final thoughts on the camera. You guys have seen, for the content that we've captured over the past couple of weeks being up here in Cape York, it hasn't disappointed me. Now, for those wondering, like, who's this camera for? If you're a novice, or at least someone that is wanting to get into the action camera kind of market, then the Hero 11 I think is a great option to be going for. For those that already have maybe a Hero 9 or a Hero 10, I think you'd be better off purchasing maybe a second-hand camera, because realistically, again, comparing it to the Hero 10 with the 11, there's not going to be a big difference. You're not going to notice a big difference between the two of them. If you've got the money, of course, go out there, go and get the Hero 11. It does have some really good options like the HYPERSMOOTH and the larger sensor, and paired with all the mods that you may already have, you know, it is still a great option to be going for. And if you're into heavy activities like forward driving or water sports, then I think the Hero 11 is great for you. If you wanted to find out more about the Hero 11, check out our notes below. If you wanted to ask a question, leave a comment on this video, we can get back to you. Make sure to follow us on our socials, where we'll be keeping you updated on new releases and our workshops. Like and subscribe. Thanks heaps for watching. Happy shooting.